Hey nerds, and welcome to Supergirl, Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So this week we had episode 2 of Supergirl, The Last Children of Krypton, and it was a great episode that finished off our Superman two-parter with a great villain, and most importantly, a nice farewell, although it's not a permanent farewell, but a farewell to Cat Grant. The torch has been passed over who her mentor is going to be to her new reporter boss, even though that is a shaky relationship at the moment, but it was, I thought, a fitting way for Kat to kind of exit the picture for the time being. It felt very in character with who she is and who she's become on the show. So I thought that was nice. Now, getting into the episode, the very first thing we need to talk about. The show did a great job of introducing a lot of kind of iconic things, from really getting our first glimpse at an iconic Metallo to what is probably the thing that just jumped out to me and a lot of people right away was a recreation of an iconic comic book cover. And this was the Crisis on Infinite Earths cover where Superman is holding Supergirl. And we had this after the first encounter with Metallo. And this is something that the shows like to do. CW did this in a promotional ad for Jay Garrick and Flash. We had the Flash of Two Earths. It's just a nice thing, and it's a nice shout out to the fans of the comics. And so seeing that was really cool. Next, we had another look at the Fortress of Solitude. Anytime we can see this is great. We got to see the ice sculptures of Kal-El's parents, and we got a little more of a heart-to-heart between John and Superman. Now, an interesting thing, at the end of the episode, John gives Superman all of the kryptonite that the U.S. government has. He makes some statement like it's all the kryptonite on Earth, but if you believe that and that Cadmus doesn't have any more, you're probably a bit naive, and I think John's a bit naive to say that. Now, Superman destroys a lot of the kryptonite that he gets his hands on, but he also stores a lot of it at the Fortress of Solitude. And pretty much everything he can get his hands on is either destroyed or stored there, except for, in the comics, there are two bits that are definitely accounted for, besides what is in Metallo. Lex Luthor has a kryptonite ring that he uses to protect himself from Superman, which later would go on to give him cancer. But Batman has also been entrusted by Superman with kryptonite in case he ever went rogue, or was under mind control, or any of the, a million things that could happen to Superman where Batman would have to stop him. Batman's the only person he trusts in the world to use it in the appropriate time. So we don't know if Superman destroyed that kryptonite. It is very possible he went and stored it at the Fortress of Solitude. And it makes sense, since, again, we haven't seen the last of Kryptonians. It may need to come into play, and it might be a time when Superman does trust John enough to give him some. So we will see if the kryptonite does come back into play and if it is stored there. Next, the Kryptonite Armor. Wynn was tasked with making something to protect them against the energy blasts from the two Metallos. We talked about that last week. That's one of Metallo's offensive weapons because he is powered by a chunk of kryptonite. Well, this is something that does come straight out of the comics, although it's a little more encasing. And usually it's kind of a lead-lined suit of some sort that would protect him from the radiation. In this case, it's literally a shield that is covering the shield on their chest. And it's powered somehow, and I guess it's just convenient that that's the only place Metallo is shooting. But the idea of this does come from the comics, and my thinking about why they didn't do a full kind of lead-lined suit is A, the time constraints, but B, they wanted to still be able to see people in that iconic, Superman outfit. And this way it gave Wynn something to do, which actually was a great conversation between him and Alex, where he told her to be, basically, you need to give her space. Foster kids don't have it the easiest, and, it's not something you'll ever understand. But, so that shield does come from the comics, although it doesn't look anything like the comic version. Now next, Jeremiah Danvers came up a lot this episode. We don't know what has happened to him. The head scientist from Cadmus, who we don't know who that is yet, but she made some sort of implication that Jeremiah Danvers was working for them. Now this seems strangely out of character unless he was put in another situation like he was with the DEO, where he did it in order to protect his family, which is a massive weakness for him if anytime some organization threatens his family, he volunteers to work for them. We don't know if that's the case. We don't know what the state is. It is clear that he is alive in one form or another, but outside of that, we have no information. Superman did promise to keep searching for him. Obviously, Alex and Kara and John are still going to be looking for him, but at the same time, we have Cadmus now actively hunting and targeting Superman and Supergirl. So a full Cadmus attack is definitely coming down the pipeline, and it's going to be interesting to see how Jeremiah is involved in that. The last thing to talk about is Snapper Carr. He's Kara's new boss, and he is very antagonistic towards her. He doesn't like her, he doesn't trust her, and he's gotten to her in ways that supervillains haven't. Now, the character we're seeing is much more of a Perry White, Daily Planet type character. The character from the comics is very different, because Snapper Carr does come from the comics. In fact, the only iteration of him that is close to being a reporter is from the Justice League Unlimited animated series. The character from the comics originally started in 1960 and was a part of the Justice League from 1960 to 1969. He was a normal civilian. He was kind of like a team mascot. He would handle publicity, deal with fan mail, things like that. But towards 1969, he was becoming unpopular, and they weren't really using him. And DC decided to do something big with him and get him to betray the Justice League. He betrayed them to a character by the name of John Doe. Yes, it sounds like John Doe, but the last name is spelled D-O-U-H, or D-O-U-G-H. It turns out this character was actually the Joker, and what he did was he betrayed the location of the current Justice League of America's headquarters, which was in Happy Harbor, to this John Doe character, and then John Doe basically attacked the hideout, and it became a big issue. If you are familiar with the Young Justice cartoons, they took a lot from this kind of Snapper Carr character. With this, when they first get their Happy Harbor hideout, they reference an incident where it was invaded and the location was discovered, and that is a direct relation to the Snapper Carr incident with John Doe and the Joker. Now, the other part is later on, during the invasion storyline, he was given superpowers. Snapper Carr had a latent metahuman gene, and during the events, he was being experimented on with another group of people, and during moments of extreme tension and pressure, that metahuman gene emerged, and he was given the abilities to teleport. Now, this is important because we know the invasion storyline is going to be used for the 4-part crossover, but it's also just an interesting idea of how the show might bring in new metahumans, new powered individuals, not just to this show, but to all of the shows. So Snapper Carr's storyline there is also very key to what is probably going to be happening in later episodes. I don't expect to see him get the ability to teleport, but he will be a big role in that storyline. Now, if you want to see something based on that storyline, again, I turn to Young Justice. They had a large chunk of Season 2 was based off of this invasion storyline, but it was with a different race of aliens. So, worth checking out. Season 2 has been off to a great start. I think Snapper Carr is going to be a nice change of pace from Cat Grant, although I'm sad to see Cat Grant go. And I can't wait to see what happens and how they're going to build up to the 4-part and invasion storyline. So, what did you guys think of this episode? And what do you think of Snapper Carr and this new change for Kara? We aren't talking about Jimmy because that's honestly just a way to keep him in the show without being a love interest, which is something he needed. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and don't forget to check out my other videos on Flash and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I've got a weekly podcast. You can find it all over at goodnerdbadnerd.com. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @goodnerdbadnerd. So until next week, this has been Brian, and this has been Supergirl, Theories and Conspiracies.